wanted to start with you guys. So is there anything, I have something planned for today that I kind of wanted to talk about. I want to talk about farming today and how you guys can kind of be supporting your agents with that and something to be presenting to them so that it's going to be a document that they have to fill out with you. Because you're going to need a little bit of market knowledge of that specific either community or building or whatever it is. But I wanted to talk about that. But before, is there anything specifically, since we only probably have a few of these sessions left, that you want me to talk about, any Compass tools, anything on the admin or ops side of things that I can maybe talk about today instead? No, you guys feel good on everything?
It's like crickets, huh?
Crickets. I mean, it's just us. It's only like a few of us. So is there anything that like, what are some roadblocks that you guys hit in like your day-to-day that, or like a gap that you kind of need help solving for while I'm here that maybe I've already come up with and I can just give to you guys?
Yeah, it's a very small group, so we are open to hearing feedback from you guys on what would be more helpful. And of course, we can go along with the plan. But if there's something that we can help answer, this is a great forum to ask any questions.
I don't know per se that I have any additional questions or other things that you can kind of share. I think that, you know, in these sessions, it's been really great to kind of hear your side of things from an agent perspective.
Okay.
You know, agents' brains are going in a zillion miles a minute. I get it.
Yeah.
So are assistants, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things. And I'm going to say this as a joke, not as a real thing, but it'd be great if we could figure out how to just tap everything that's in your brain and be able to download it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think
So,
that's like one of the hardest things for sure.
yeah, it's that
Yeah.
mind reading class never got, taken, and that just doesn't work.
I know.
So, a lot of the things that you've brought up, with the email and events and all of the different, the farming thing that you're talking about, the agent that I'm working with literally is like the day before that I get on these calls with you, he's bringing up the same topic. So
Oh my God,
I think
that's
there's kind of
crazy.
there's this synergy going on, which is great.
Yeah.
And I'm just, trying to stay in lockstep. So it really helps that you bring up these things that I then go back and I don't pound them over the head with it, but I go back and I'm like, okay,
It's okay
so
to do that too. Yeah.
we have a meeting to talk to somebody about farming on Monday, and they were talking about farming on Thursday. So
Yeah.
you kind of have been giving me this
Good. Okay.
head start, right?
So I think that's a really good point you bring up. I think that oftentimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, because I'm kind of like that ops side, but also an agent, like I feel like I'm able to break down those steps a little bit more. I oftentimes feel like an agent is like, let's go farm. And then you're like, okay, but like, what are the steps that have to be taken to make that be really successful? So
Right.
That's kind of like how I like to break it down. I hope that will be helpful today in just, in just farming. That's kind of like what I tried to do before. I mean, I feel like if I were to go to, an assistant and say, oh, go plan my client event, like my end of the year party, it's kind of like, okay, who do you want there? Where do you want it? What are your expectations? So being able to kind of break it down into steps has been very helpful for me to also be able to make sure that these things are very repeatable and very scalable. And I hope it's very helpful for you too, which is what I'm hearing. So I'll jump into farming today. And Deb and I have talked about this before kind of offline, and we're hoping to kind of grow this out, I think, for next year as well in the playbook. But it's kind of when someone does come up to you and say, I want to start farming, it's like, okay, well, where and how do you come up with that place? Because I think sometimes people, and I was just in Kansas City and we had a few people in the audience who shared this as well. It's like, I don't know, I feel like you pick a place where it's like the highest price point and you don't really know anything about it. And then you spend all this money on mailers and you don't get any success because there wasn't enough of like an audit done on it to understand or be able to predict any kind of percentage of success that's going to happen there. So that's what I've tried to do with this document. And I'm hoping that this will evolve to something else. And that's usually what happens with our stuff. But this has been a really good place to start. I think, as a lot of people are kind of thinking about business planning right now and their core four and what kind of buckets of business they want to surround their business plan on, farming has been something that's at least come up with me with pretty much all my coaching clients. So I'm sure it's going to come up with your agents. And I think being able to kind of have a plan for how to start them in the right direction of picking a place will be very helpful. So I'll go through that right now. I'm just picking out one of like my clients, my coaching clients from California. So ignore what it says on there, and I'll share this document with you guys as well.
Well, I'm
But
in California, so that's great. I mean, it's
oh, good.
perfect. And I'm
Cool.
in the Oakland area, so that makes it even better.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So she only filled out a tiny bit of this, but I can kind of fill it out. Maybe you can help me fill it out as well. So they had picked downtown Oakland. I don't know that very well, but I kind of relate that to myself. So you'll basically have your agent go in, put in the farm name right here. When I think, which is not something on here, but what I would tell all my coaching clients to do is it depends on what your budget is. I think coming up with how much money you'd like to allot towards farming next year or that farm next year is going to kind of help me kind of pick something. And that's going to be a big starting point, is how much money do you even want to spend there? And then you can kind of think of how big can my farm be? So you usually want to figure, like, depending on if you're doing EDDM, every door direct mail through USPS, that's going to cost you about like 18 to 20 cents a mailer. If you go and do regular mailers through Express Stocks, I don't know exactly how much that is, but I think it's about double that. So you want to kind of think about what those differences are in cost as well. So figure maybe $1 per postcard. If you want to spend about like $5,000 a year, figure you want to have, I don't know what that is, but maybe roughly like 300 homes in your farm that you're focusing on to really be able to do it successfully. I think a lot of people will pick these. Just on the phone with somebody from New York. He was telling me about this awesome building complex that's like 1,600 units. That's great if you want to be spending about $2,000 a month on mailers just to have 12 go out for the year. So what we decided on was picking one of those buildings that has about maybe, I think there's like 9 buildings in the whole thing. So whatever that breaks up to, but it was roughly about like 300 units. So I said, that's much more manageable. Now you're thinking more $350 a month versus that huge expense. And when people do pick such a big farm, that cost is what stops them from being consistent with it and really having a big purpose for each mailer. So that's something that I try to focus on. So make it small. If you have a client or if you have an agent who's been farming for a long time, and maybe they already have a lot of presence there, maybe you can up the ante, maybe you want to expand out on that. But for someone who's just starting out with a farm, I think picking something around 300 homes is a really good start. So once you've picked that farm, or you have a good idea of which one you want to be doing this audit on, put in the farm name. Then you want to go in and check how many homes have sold in that radius or in that community, in that building, whatever you're looking at, in the last 12 months. So for this, let's just say it was 6. I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this 10. I'm just going to actually, let me not edit hers. Let me make a copy of this really quick.
So it's how many homes sold as a global, not as this particular, or not this particular agent, right?
Yep, not this. So that question will come into play. So exactly. So if you're picking, I'm just going to do something like for mine. So if it's okay, I'm just going to use one of my farms, for example. So farm name is the Meadows. How many homes have sold there in the last 12 months? 10 have sold in the last 12 months as a whole. We didn't sell all of those. So then when I think of this next question, which is probably the most important question that no one ever looks at, how many of those homes, so out of the 10, were sold by either 1 or 2 agents? So what I'm saying there is, if there's 10 homes that are sold and Joe and Mary have sold 8 of those 10 homes, not together, but maybe they each sold 4, that's going to be a really difficult market to go in and penetrate, because Joe and Mary, or just Joe or just Mary, are doing a really good job of owning that market. So why are we going to pick that? If instead you say, out of the 10 homes, Joe maybe sold 2 of those, and then the other 8 of those homes that were sold were all sold by not random agents, but random agents for the sake of this, just kind of one-offs. No one really owns the market there. None of those agents live in the community or right there. So that's something more that I would look for when I'm thinking of starting into a farm, because that's going to be much easier to penetrate than trying to compete with someone who's been selling in there and selling very consistently the most amount of homes for X amount of years, if that makes sense. So that's what you'll go in and put there. You can just go on the MLS and check that. So out of the 10, go and look for that. So I would say in here, how many of these homes are sold by 1 or 2 agents? So if I'm doing it for the sake of us, 6 of them were, and they were all sold by the Quinn and Kate team. So that's something I want to look at there. How many total homes are in that radius? So for me, the Meadows is a community. It's a townhouse community. There are 192 of the townhouses in there. So you guys will do the same thing. If you're picking streets, you would just say 300 or 290 or whatever that is. Who's the target demographic that wants to buy here? So you want to think about age range. You want to think, are they couples? Are they families? Are they downsizers? That's something I try to think about here. So for me, for the sake of the Meadows, target demographic who wants to buy here are either downsizers moving from a single family house who don't want any maintenance or very little maintenance, or it's really young couples who maybe have like one baby, because the biggest townhouse there is only 2 bedrooms. So you kind of want to start to think about that and start to make inferences from there. And my purpose of doing that is to make sure that target demographic of the community would hopefully align really well with who your demographic is as a team or as an agent to begin with. So I wouldn't probably, if I never sold to downsizers, I probably wouldn't pick a community that is very heavy on the downsizers, because it's going to be much harder for me to capture that audience to begin with, let alone go in and sell there. But if you are somebody who works a lot with maybe first-time home buyers and you're going to start farming a community that happens to be a great attraction for that type of client, that would be something that I'd say, that's really nice. It kind of seems like my brand and who I sell to will align really nicely of who that farm attracts. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So you'll put that in there. How many homes have you sold in the Meadows in your career? So this is gonna be for your agent. So for us, I don't know off the top of my head, but a lot. So I'd probably say, because my mom's lived there and I grew up there for the last, she has lived there for 17 years. I would probably say she's sold like 40 plus homes in there. This is another thing that I think when you guys are picking a farm with your agent, you want to think about. Starting with a new farm, if your agent is new to farming, maybe starting with an area that they already do a lot of business in is going to be very helpful. It's going to be one step closer to penetrating that market that somebody who's never sold there and is now trying to break into. If you haven't sold anything there, it's going to be a little bit harder of a sell if you do get a call. And when somebody asks you that question of how many houses have you sold around here, how knowledgeable are you on the area, having a few sales under your belt is definitely going to be a little bit easier to sell yourself in there. So that's something to think about. And then this is a question I love. So what do you love about, what does your agent love about the Meadows? Think if you were a buyer in today's market, what would be attracting you here rather than a similar community nearby, and what sets it apart from the rest? So from here, you'll be very surprised, and you could just be having this conversation with your agent, but they're going to be giving a lot of really great nuggets that could eventually be like one-liners or a few great bullet points on a mailer to begin with. This is also really good prep for your agents to start perfecting their pitch when they go into these listing presentations, or if they're selling to a buyer there. This is something for us that's been very helpful, and we really try to target our mailers to be very specific to that community. So for an example, I would love to do the Meadows postcard, and that would only go out to those 192 homes. But on there, I'd say what I love most about the Meadows. Here's what sets the Meadows apart from the 3 other townhouse communities that are within a 3-mile radius. Here's why people would choose to buy at the Meadows instead of the other one. And that really starts to label you and brand you as that market expert, as that farm expert. So getting as many nuggets here from your agent will be super helpful if you wanted to go and do a community newsletter, if you wanted to do mailers, if you had emails. And then also for them just to have as conversation pieces. So try to really have your agent open up as much as possible here, so that you as on the ops side of things, as an assistant, are really able to also understand that farm really well. So you're not really kept in the dark and then they're holding all the nuggets up in their head. Next one is going to be like, what's the average price point in the Meadows? So for me, I would say, I don't know exactly what the average is, but for 1 bedrooms, they sell for about $450, and for 2 beds, sell for about $525, I think right now. So that's something just to know there. Very simple, just so you guys can also be up to date. Obviously, you need that. And then when were they built? So for me, I actually take this question very to heart when I'm looking at a farm, because I want to know if we're looking, I'm going to give you an example. So there's a community near me. They were built in between 2002 and 2005 or 6. So what that tells me is that, and it's in a really, really good school district. So what that tells me right there is that a lot of these owners have now lived there for about 17 years. That's the average life cycle of a family who would be buying maybe a 4,000 square foot house. And they're most likely either their kids have already graduated or they're going to be graduating, because you think most people around that time were moving in when their kids were going into kindergarten. So that would make their kids about like 21, 22. And then if they had kids when they went in there, that would make them about 18. They're probably getting ready to move. So that would tell me, what the inference I would take is that there's about to be a big turnover in that community. And those are the original owners. So I know the life cycle of that house. So try to think about that, that age of when they were built. If you're looking at same thing, like a 1990s home, you can probably expect a turnover to either be continuing to happen or is about to happen as well. So that's a really good inference point there of checking in on when they were built. Also, if you're looking at new development, 2016, 2017, you're able to also take that into consideration when you're thinking of who maybe wants to be buying new builds. It's again going to be a lot of people who are younger and who really like the look of these perfect white kitchens and, you know, things like that. Or it's going to be people who really just went from maybe an older home and they just don't want to have to worry about the upkeep of an older home. They want new mechanicals, they want new houses. And that's kind of, for me, like as an agent, that's where my brain would be going there. So you want to get that. For us, I think they were built in 1978, I think it was. So like 1980. So any questions there so far? I know this is like a lot of information.
No, it's kind of going down the checklist.
Cool.
So.
Awesome. Okay, so then where are the buyers coming from? This is something I really like to think about, and it's kind of what we just talked about. So think downsizers for us, for the Meadows. I would say they're either coming from the district if they're downsizers, but they love the area, they love the community, they don't want to leave there. But for other people, this could be they're coming from the city. If you're in like a secondary home market, maybe they're coming from that feeder. So for me, I'm in New York. Maybe I would think about if I was in Miami, I would think about, okay, maybe they're all coming from New York. If I'm in Chicago, maybe they're going to Arizona. So start to think about that. And just think it's, again, really, really good. You basically just want to, if someone else, to your point before, if somebody else is going into this document and you're not an agent, you have a really good idea of who's buying in this farm, who's selling in this farm, how much they go for, when were they built. You kind of have like this huge audit done on the farm, and anybody can go in there and understand it. If I were a team lead and I had a lot of agents underneath me, I would be making these for all the communities I sell in and all of the farms that I have, so that my junior agents, if they just come on or if they want to start farming themselves, if they're going to host an open house for me in this farm, what a great piece of information to have stored in a certain folder regarding that area for them to immediately go in and have a good idea of what they're walking into. So
Kate, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking right before you said that,
yeah,
hey, we're having a planning meeting. This would be a great exercise.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, if you're a team lead and you have an agent, I mean, how many team leads, if you guys probably all represent the team leads, if they have junior agents that come to them, I want to start farming, I need $5,000 in my marketing budget next year to do that, or $3,000. That's great, but like, what's your plan and what's your reasoning for choosing that farm? I have a lot of my team leads who are my coaching clients, having their junior agents fill one of these out and having them repitch it to them and kind of proving to them why they deserve X amount of marketing dollars to go forward with this.
Cool.
So same kind of thing. And then where are the sellers going? Just as a little piece of, I don't know, Kate insight onto the where are sellers going. I do have a client in Chicago who has pretty much owned this farm for probably 10 years. And I asked her a question. I said, where are the sellers going? Asked her the same question. Oh, they all go to Scottsdale. Okay, great. So I happen to know a Scottsdale Compass agent there who I'm very close with. And I put the two of them together, and she is going to be sharing the marketing costs of a certain mailer that's going out that has a picture and the QR code and the information of the Scottsdale agent. And they're sharing that marketing cost for that specific mailer that I think is going to go out like 4 times next year to the farm. So these are kind of creative ways of being able to get that information in there and then really taking that inference and putting it into action in a mailer. And that can also save them a lot of money. And with that, you can also get that referral, of course, going out to Scottsdale. So kind of being able to predict what people want to see and what should be on these mailers that will make it really interesting for these sellers to actually not just get in the mail and then throw away. So that's my sheet on there, and you guys will all get a copy of this. I'm just going to put this. I'm just going to label it copy of farming. I'm going to drop the link. All right, I'm going to put this in the chat right now for you guys so you have it. Cool. All right, any questions on farming? You can either be asking Kate the coach, Kate the agent. You got me for another 5 minutes. No questions. Everyone's good on farming. Do any of your agents farm right now?
My agent doesn't, but he, as I said, we have a meeting on Monday to talk to somebody about farming. So it just, that's why I was like, this is really timely.
Yes, perfect. Good. I'm so happy I can be a mind reader for you, Jennifer.
It's working great, Kate.
Good. Perfect. Perfect. I'm gonna add that to my bio. I'm also a mind reader.
Right? Careful.
I'm gonna share then. Yeah, right. I'm gonna share one more trick since it's something I just figured out. I don't know if excuse me, the post office just updated this or not, but I'm going to show you guys the EDDM website that's on USPS that they just updated, and it can give you a lot of really great data points. If you want to choose to do EDDM, great, but you can also just use this as a free resource online if you are trying to choose where to be farming, or if you need new data on that specific farm. So I'm going to go on to here. I'll drop this link right at the end. So you basically just go on USPS.com, you type in EDDM, it'll bring you right over to this page. You're going to click on this EDDM online tool, and you can basically put in any route across the US. So I'm going to put in, I'm going to stick with the Meadows right now, put in that zip code right in there. It will process and then it'll pull this up. So what EDDM, if you guys are not familiar with it, is you basically choose routes to go and put this mail on, and that's basically the radius that it gets sent to. So for me, because I grew up here, John, our mailman, you gotta love John. John does this route right over here. He always has. So if I wanted to go and put something on to Katona-Lewisboro, which is one of our main things, this is the Meadows. Right in here, you guys will see this. This is that farm I was talking about. So I basically click on this route, and right over here in the corner, you'll see how much it would cost me to mail to that. So what you do is you basically look at what the post office drop off is. This is the post office I would go and drop these off to. I would have the 437 mailers printed by Express Docs and then just mailed to me or mailed to my office. And it's only going to cost me about 18 cents each to mail. And that is how I get to this cost. So it's only going to cost me about $80 to mail. Whereas if I did it straight through Express Docs with the full service, I think it would cost, I don't know, I would need to go on and see, but it's a lot more. It's like double or triple that. So it's a little bit of an extra piece of work to go and do, but it does save you a lot of money. And with that, next year, we're going to be able to hit a lot more of this entire region rather than just this one right in here. So the trick that I wanted to show you guys was right here. If you wanted to know how many downsizers, let's say we're in this area, I would probably go up to, again, this is nuanced to me in this little market, but I'd probably do like 55 to 70. And then you guys will see that as I hover over it, it gives you that percentage right here of, so 75% of this route is in between 55 and 70. And it also gives you the median income. So I would be able to see there that on that route, people make on average, or in the median, whatever it is, 187,000. So this might just be helpful, Jennifer, for you who's like going into a meeting. If you guys are trying to start out and just say, oh my God, where do I even start? How do I even think about where I want to farm? This might be a really good spot to start. And it gives you a ton of information. So I could go and do the exact same thing. Let's say I wanted to see like first time buyers. for us, I would say in this price point would probably be somewhere between like that 30 to 40. Search. Then I'd be able to go over it and say, okay, so 16% live there. I wonder if I were to go out and zoom out and go somewhere, maybe like a little bit closer to the city, how that would start to change. Maybe I'll go pick like right over here. I might have to put this in. Let's do. So I would maybe go on these and you'll start to see how that age range kind of started to go up from there. So now instead of it being that like 16%, it went up to almost 30%. You can see how that starts to change. So you also see how the income just went down. So if you have an agent who's trying to focus on a certain price point, having a good indication of what the income is on those routes or in those zip codes might be really helpful for them to just do a little check-in and make sure that everything again is aligning with where they want their brand to be and where they want to be selling. So this is just a little trick, and guaranteed your agent has not played around on here. So you might be able to grab a lot of great data ahead of the meeting and really impress them.
Cool.
It's really fun. So I'll drop this link in the chat as well. So that's what I have. I hope that's helpful for everybody. That is exactly like the craziest of agent, which is me. My brain out on paper. That's what I think about. That's what I would want to know. And it would be, if someone could have done that for me, or at least pointed me in the right direction so I didn't have to figure that all out on my own, it would have been very helpful. So
Cool. Well,
every
thanks for
agent
setting
would
us
be
up for success. I appreciate it.
That's my goal. That is my goal. And you can take full credit. Say you guys came up with this document completely on your own. They'll be like, oh my God, this is great. So yeah, of course, Taylor, of course. So next week, I was just alerted, is our last session. So I'll come up with something good if you guys don't have any ideas. But if there is anything, I know I already asked this question in the beginning, no one really had an answer to it. But if there is anything that comes out of maybe this farming meeting and you guys need like a farming part 2 to help solve for some gaps that happened in there, let me know. And we can do that next week. But I'll come up with something, and then at the beginning of it, you guys just tell me if you guys have any questions on any topics that we've covered, and if I can go into depth more, and we can just pivot and do that next week too. But next week is our last session, so let's make it good and come prepared. If you guys need anything in the meantime, just let me know.
Okay. Thanks so
All
much.
right.
Have a
Thanks,
good day.
guys. Have a good one. Talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon.
Guys, have a
Bye-bye.
great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.